I'm based in Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I work in education. I actually have a school, a preschool, a primary school, and a high school. We're trying to operate within a normal educational environment to show that within that area you can do a lot of creative things. We attract a lot of people from here, which is what I wanted. So we're a local school in that sense, even if we teach in English and in Bosnian. We attract parents who, because of the war here, the recent war here, I think we attract parents who wanted their children to be exposed to a more open-minded mindset. You know, parents who wanted their children to be open to the world and open to difference and open to opportunities. So I think that's probably what defines our community. The core purpose for us is that education is not so much about knowledge. Knowledge is the result of education for me. And so the focus of the school and the main value system is to develop personality, to develop character. Basically, we are a resource center, if you want, that offers experience, a safe and a well thought through experience that offers the child the opportunity to get to know itself. And to understand, you know, how vibrant and how, you know, complete and how so full of beautiful qualities it is, and then is given the opportunity to exercise these qualities through real life experiences, and through that gets to know itself, builds itself with strong values. And, you know, what are the main values? I mean, respect, diversity, loving yourself. I think at the core of that, it's loving yourself, which enables you to love others. And actually, we've launched a campaign at Bloom, which is called Love Yourself, Speak Yourself. And it's really that, actually. I've realized that's the core of what we do. It's getting children to connect to themselves, to love themselves for who they are in their own unique way, and to speak that out loud, to bring it out to the world. Well, what we try to do is we work with this beautiful project that's called the Virtues Project. And we start very young in our preschool. And the whole idea is to teach children the language of the virtues, which is, it's just a language which gives them a much broader understanding of the qualities that can live within them. And if you give them that vocabulary, they're able to relate to the world and to themselves in a completely different manner. So, I mean, all those values are explained to them. And then the idea is whatever happens in the school, what we see again, we come back to experience. Whatever experience happens at school, it's an opportunity for the students to be confronted with those values within themselves and within others, and to put them into practice. So I recently posted on our blog a story about a cat who died at school, and how that triggered a whole conversation about death, but also how interesting it was to see what it woke up in the children and how they responded to each other and how they wanted to bury the cat. There was all sorts of reflections going on. There was also a very lovely situation recently, which started off bad because a child was caught saying something very disrespectful to the father of another child who was from a very different culture. And there was a whole misunderstanding behind that. But actually, that was a huge opportunity for the child and for the families to get together, to talk about diversity, about misunderstanding, about, being a foreigner in another country, and how you feel when you're in amongst people who don't understand you. And so every single moment is an opportunity to encounter these values. And that's really the story of Bloom. It's this experience that's ongoing all the time. The struggles are many. I think it's because, first of all, it's because the educational system is an old system. It's one of the oldest systems in the world, and it hasn't evolved. The difficulty is that education is so important, and people are so attached to what it can do for their lives, that they're hanging on to the way things work, because they can't imagine how it could work differently. So the problem we're having, for instance, is that when we have children who do all their work at home and don't go home with homework, and don't have 20 pages in their notebooks to prove that they've written down a lesson because the lesson has gone through an experiment, and so on, parents are very stressed because they're wondering what their children are learning, and they can't measure it. basically a lot of work is done one-on-one with parents and with the institutions to explain what we're doing all the time. And the problem is also to comply to those, test taking, everything. We lose a little bit of what we do because we're just drilling children to produce knowledge in a certain way, to be evaluated in a certain form. And so we have to take away a little bit of the experience to enable them to do that. There's also the fear of not fitting in, because the world still works in a certain way. So they all say, that's all fine what you do. It's wonderful. I see my child is really happy. I see my child is, confident and everything, but he still has to get into that university. And that university is still gonna, take him in on the basis of its grades. So it's like a whole system that has to evolve, and it's gonna take time. I actually think that schools will disappear personally. And I think something else will take over, not education, but the schools, because it's such a heavy system that it's going to gradually disintegrate, but it's going to take time. And in the meantime, other things are going to replace it. The difficulty that I have found very interesting at a personal level is that being a foreigner here has been very difficult, and it has worked against me. I mean, I grew up in cities which were very diverse. They have their problems, they're not perfect, but I've always been in very diverse communities. And so I didn't know what it was to live in a place where, being a foreigner is something very different. And I've had to train my local staff, and I've had to extract myself in order for the process to be trusted by parents. The trust is a huge issue, and the trust plays out at many different levels. I think a lot of people know that, because of the technology now, the technology and the medical development, I think knowledge is going to be accessed very easily. So so I think theoretical conceptual knowledge has to be taught, online, and not necessarily by people. Everything can be pre-prepared, and then we have to create on the side environments for life experience, for human development, and educators. So a teacher no longer will be there to teach chemistry, or that they're not needed for that, but they're there to be able to take a human being through a whole experience and develop its values and develop its understanding of itself and understand the world. And, knowledge will be useful in that. Knowledge is very important, but it won't, it's not necessary to have a person dedicated only to transferring that. We don't need that anymore. Maybe one day we'll even have chips and we'll be able to access that information. So it's really interesting with all this development of AI. And if you look at all the sci-fi films and everything, I think that's the big challenge of our human development, is how do you allow for this incredible development to happen and not lose our humanity? And it's the same thing in education. It's going to happen exactly that. It's the process of learning and what it does to you as a person that is really the valuable thing. The first ebbf experience was the most amazing one, in the sense that I didn't expect it at all. I thought I was going to, to go to a conference with intelligent people that would be based on values and so on and so forth. But what I got was far beyond that. And it's just, it's connecting to a group of people, a very diverse group of people, and having very, very deep and honest conversations, a very authentic place, very creative. I've brought back so many creative connections, creative ideas, creative experiences from that. I come back completely rejuvenated, and completely energized. What you do at ebbf when we have all these conversations that happen, and you don't know what's going to come out of the conversations. You have a structure, you've provided us with an environment with intelligent people, with material and everything, but then something organic happens and you support that, and loads of things happen within that, and they're beautiful learning experiences. There's sometimes, even now, I haven't unfortunately been to the conference last year, but I still have now moments where I think, oh gosh, yes, now, and I connected to something I experienced at ebbf 2-3 years ago. So it's this organic process that's very alive. It's a very alive space. I think that we're at a very, very important moment in history, and I think our human mistake is always to forget about values. You know, we talk a lot about values. It's very fashionable. It's very politically correct, etc. But where we always fail is to actually live our values. When I say we, as a human community, and I think it's so important what you're doing at ebbf, because we're always bringing it back to the values, to the experience of values, So I thank you for that, and I think if we all put our energy there, I think there's a big chance that we survive this COVID and then this new technological revolution. So let's do it.